everyone, this is Mary from A Passion for Paper Shop. Thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to be looking at some avocado dyed scrappy notepads, and I welcome you to craft along with me. If you'd like to join me, here are some materials that you might want to get a hold of. Just a bunch of avocado dyed paper, and some of these I have already cut or torn into smaller pieces, and some do have some patterns, music sheets, book pages, pretty much whatever you've got in your avocado dyed stash. And I tend to look for mostly papers that are around 3 inches wide, and obviously they're going to be all different lengths, but I usually go around 7.5 or 7 and shorter. So those would be great to have, and if you've got full sheets of paper, we can use those too. Here I have a couple of sheets of full paper, and then I also pulled out some printables that are on avocado dyed paper. I love these French images. And then I have a few avocado dyed book pages. Some of them are French. And then I have this beautiful French document that I actually avocado dyed, so it's a beautiful shade of pink. And more labels and another printout of the old French document. And then just a few things to embellish the tops with. As you can see here, I have an assortment of little things to put on the top. So I would cut out little bits of this. This is avocado dyed vintage lace. These are some beautiful little lace flowers that I picked up at a vintage shop, and I'm almost out. You can see this is all I have left. These are some other pieces of lace or trim that you could put at the top. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I'll show you my samples. So these are ones that I've just made recently. Again, this has that beautiful vintage trim at the top. I do sew mine, but obviously you could glue it if you do not want to sew. I love sewing on paper. It's one of my passions, so I love to sew mine, and I also love having these long dangly threads. This is just a little piece of paper that I had received in a stack of papers from a while ago, and then the rest of these are pretty much all different shades of my avocado dyed papers. And I love the look achieved from ripping the edges and just staggering them, so they're all different lengths. This one was actually from a book page that had music on it, and I have a beautiful swirl pattern in this. Kind of even see it on the back. It's a little more faint, but there's one scrappy notepad. And next one just has some different images on the front, and I did put some layering of laces, and these threads are actually from an avocado dyed piece of fabric. We have the digital, some music sheet, book page, and these are all avocado dyed papers. I'm not sure how well they show up on the screen, but they're all just a delightful shade of pink. Some are lighter than others, some are darker than others. You can see the variation here. It's a very light page and a much darker page. And then we have the back, which is with that delightful messy stitching, and even in the edges you can kind of see where the color kind of gathers and sits into the torn edge. And so when you tear it first and then put it in the avocado dye bath, that is how you get those edges to look nice and almost like they've been distress inked. This is a lovely doily that's been avocado dyed. And these are really fun papers. I basically just take white acrylic paint and roll it over a stencil onto avocado dyed paper to get that look. And then I also have a variety of lined paper, and I love these little fringy elements to add texture. This is some really beautiful variation in the dye. And then a couple more pages. We have that avocado dyed music sheet book page, and then that beautiful swirl pattern on the bottom. So that is this Scrappy Notepad. This one's very similar. And again, just a variety of papers and things that people could write notes on and use it as a notebook. They could also tear things out and use them as collage elements in a different part of the journal. And I just think these are so sweet peeking out here, these little white acrylic paint on the avocado dyed paper, put on a stencil. And then this has some of that white trim, and also layered some little, this is actually a bit of a little girl's ballerina skirt that was torn, and so I just cut up the rest of it and I'm using it. See, there's another little label up there, could also be used. I like to vary the labels to one down low further, one up high, so they're not all the same. This is a beautiful page. It's a book page that was painted on with watercolor and acrylic paints and then printed in avocado dyed, so it's that wonderful color of pink in the background. Book page. This one has a little stenciled image from the avocado dye bath and a beautiful swirl pattern. Last one is a really tall one for those of you who want to make those lovely tall skinny journals. This one is much taller than the rest, has pretty much all the same type of papers. Let me just measure it for you. This one is just over 10 inches. The other ones are all pretty much similar, coming in around 7.5, just over. So the 7.5 inch ones fit really nicely into, you know, many sizes of journals. So those are the sample / prototypes, and we'll go ahead and make some together now. If you want, you could pause the video and go get some supplies. I think I'll start by using these papers. So if you have a full sheet of paper, you could just tear along with me. I tend to like to tear them. And again, sometimes I tear the paper first and then I put it in the avocado dye bath. And these, obviously, I did not do that. So I'll probably just rip 2 of them at a time. So I just like to line them up on my grid. Make sure I'm ripping them evenly, and I tend to do around 3 inches or 3 1/4. I think I'll do this one 3 1/4, just a little bit wider, and then I make them 3 at a time. So I'm going to do another one with that same 1, 2, 3 1/4 size, so that way I'll have 3 that I will use as my backings. And they're pretty close in size. I just fold them down. I always just eyeball it. I've been making these for a while now, so I don't ever measure. Just think, how much do I want to put down? So let's take a look so you can see how wide that is if you're wanting to know. So it's more than half an inch, but not quite an inch. Even in the camera, there we go. So you can see that is how far I like to fold them down. And then they're 2, 4, 6, 7, like 7 3/4 lengths tall. And again, you could rip them and make them a little shorter, make one longer, one shorter. I'm gonna just put that one in the middle since that's a slightly different color. And that would be our backing. And it's just copy paper that I have avocado dyed. So next we need to start our layering. So what I would do here is rip this, and I could rip it with my hands or I could rip it with the ruler. I'm gonna just take a little look-see here. Now if I wanted it the exact same, I could do it, which I think is what I'll do for that one. Pop it in there. Then let's do one more. I'm gonna rip this one. 1, 2, 3. So now the next most important thing is to see where the end is. So you want to figure out how much space you want to leave. So to me that looks good. And then I would just turn it over and rip off the top. So you can see exactly how much you're going to take off based on, and you could cut this with a scissor too. And then this will go, tuck it under the folded area. And there we have one of our pages. And what I'm going to want to do is make sure we can see some of that at the bottom, because that's beautiful script. And then I'm going to look through my stash. Remember, I brought all this little stack of papers with me. And I'm just going to look for something that would complement the color. So I like to vary them. And so here's one that's a little lighter. So I have lighter color, darker, lighter. And then this is also something that I want to see more of this. So I look to see what's there. And then I'm going to rip part of this one a little shorter so I can see more of the one underneath. And then I also experiment with moving it back and forth because I like having things peek out the sides. So that's the next page. And then maybe I'll take something like this with a little music sheet and just rip that off. And these little pieces that I rip off, I keep nearby because a lot of times I can use those as one of the shorter pieces near the top. Okay. So just keep kind of pulling in pieces, ripping them and staggering them so you have that nice waterfall effect. We can see all the different elements underneath. And I think what I'm going to do is bring in another darker piece to kind of complement that. I think I will use something like that. Now I'm going to rip this one, hand rip it. I like to do a mixture of hand ripping and ruler ripping because of the different way it looks. I just like that, having a mixture of those. So then I'm going to bring in, this is the piece I tore off. Just examining that music sheet. And then we also have a little piece from the book page. It's nice to just have a lot of different layers going on. Now Not crazy about that. They're both exactly the same. So at that point, I think I'll just come up here and rip part of this off. I like that word famous, so I want to leave that in there. So it's kind of fun. And then that's looking pretty good. What I do then too is to kind of keep it all together is put on one of these clips. So I'm going to put the clip here, and then I'll set this aside, and basically I'll see if there's anything else I want to add to it. Otherwise I'll just put it to the side and maybe try out a few different things at the top. I think that looks really nice, and then I could even give that a little cut. Let me grab my scissor. And this is ready to go to the sewing machine. And then I would take up the next one, going to rip the bottom and see where I want that to land, and then I would take off the top. Sometimes I'll do a scissors, sometimes I'll do the ruler, sometimes I just rip. So those all work. Just tuck it under there, and now we're building the second one. I always examine the paper to see if there's a certain side or a certain edge that looks especially delightful, and I want to put that at the bottom. You know, if there's anything I want to hide, I would stick it underneath here. So just, you know, kind of continue to work my way up. This, I need some differing elements. So here is a book page, and then you always have to decide, you know, what side to use, how high to put it. I'm not real crazy about that. I seem to have a little piece of a little stain of coffee dye that has gotten onto my avocado dyed book page, so I'm going to just rip that off. And I'm going to cut that down so that we have a nice amount showing at the bottom. So then I'm going to go back into my papers, just see if I could find, I have some more grungy ones. That would probably look good at the bottom because I like the way this variation of color is showing there. These shorter pages. Now this looks kind of nice because it has, although there's a little color there. Let's try this one. First day is kind of nice there. So I'm going to go ahead and put my little clip on to keep this in place. And then I can just rip this, and it's always good to turn them over so you can see exactly how much you need to rip off. That's a pretty decent size. I could probably even use that. Now, for this one, I have to decide, do I want it flat like that, or, and if so, then I would push it up more, or do I want to tear it? Let's try pushing it up more. And keeping it straight. And then I would cut the top. Because again, it's the bottoms that you really want to notice how they look. And I could put another one in there. This one I will rip because that's too many straight edges in a row. So I would do that and then go ahead and tear a piece of this off. Let's see, we don't have any, we have a book page and we have that beautiful script. So now I'm looking at these. I think it would be nice to put something, one of these in here. This is a very faint color, pink. We could rip it there. Let's just see how that would look. Ooh, that's nice. And I can sew right along that edge, so it doesn't have to be all the way up. It just has to be up far enough where I can sew on it. I think that looks pretty nice because I like the variation of color. It's a lighter pink, darker pink, lighter pink, even lighter, and then a darker one down here. So to me that looks good. And I think at this point I would bring in my avocado dyed lace. I think this was from a vintage tablecloth that I cut pieces of it off. And we'll just kind of measure it there. I could use this to put across the top. And probably, sometimes I'll even put in some of these tiny little scraps. So for example, like this one and this one, maybe a lighter one, mix it up a little bit. And then kind of just adds a little bit more variety. And I would put these under or over the lace. I think I kind of like to see how it would look under the lace. So that does give it a little bit of a different look. Makes it more interesting. You can see the darker pink underneath the lace. So there's another one ready for the sewing machine. And we're on to our third and final avocado dyed scrappy pad. And I do like the idea of using this, so I'll pull that in. Oh, talked about using this. Let's see how this looks. I kind of really like this variation of color. It's a more grungy piece. So if I turn it over, I can see exactly the size I need. So here I can rip off this excess. And here, I think I'll do this one with some hand tearing. Okay. And then they always have to be tucked underneath. Oh, I like how that looks. And I definitely want to use this. And then we just have to fill in a bit more. Here's a nice one. So again, when you turn it over, you can see exactly where to tear that. So that's good. Now this is the piece that I tore off of that grungy paper right here. I think I would like to add this back in to have a little continuity. So I'm gonna just tuck it under there, let it peek out. And I like how that looks. Add in a book page. Usually if I have a choice, I want that raggedy edge of the book page to show. See if it's long enough. Yep. Ooh, that fit in perfectly. I didn't even have to rip it. That was lucky. And I feel like we just need a couple more. Sometimes I'll even pop in like little narrow ones. But I already have that same exact color right there, so I think I'll just keep looking. And at this point, I'm deciding, should I use a darker one or a lighter one? So I'm pulling in a couple different shades to see which one I think would look better. Okay, so here's my options. Ooh, this is good because it's not exactly the same. It's kind of in between the two who are there now. So I'm going to go ahead and rip this. Always kind of line it up. So I'm trying to rip it somewhat straight there. And then I'm going to need to rip it at the bottom. So there we go. So another layer. And then I think we need one in between here. So we could go either darker or lighter. Kind of thinking I like this one. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the space between this, and I'm going about halfway. So between this layer and this layer. And then I flip it over so that I can rip it, straighten it up a bit. And I rip the side and rip the top. And then come back and tuck it under. In fact, I think I will flip it upside down so that I can have this rougher edge showing. And it's somewhat straight because it was ripped with the ruler, but it's not completely straight like if it had been cut with scissors. So I kind of like the way that looks. And that is looking pretty nice. And then I would just come back in and I would either pick something like that maybe. Or I could do the whole one across. Looks like this needs to be ironed. It's a little bit bent. That's pretty. Or we could take another little piece of this off. Just kind of cutting this. And we'll clip that together, take it to the sewing machine. So there we have it. We made 3 scrappy notepads together. That was so fun. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you found some inspiration here. And I look forward to coming back and doing some more crafting with y'all real soon. Bye.